Hey YouTube, today we're going to be looking at a couple carry options and handguns, and I get this question every single day: which one would be better, a revolver or a semi-automatic handgun? So we're going to show you a couple of real common ones here that a lot of people choose to carry. And before we go any further, I'm going to show you these handguns are not loaded and we are cleared to make this video. I still have never had an accidental discharge while making a video. So what we're going to do here is look at what we got. We have a Taurus G3C, and this is a real common, especially first timers or beginners that are getting into handguns choice out there. This gun is a very reliable option. It's a very budget minded gun, and this is a 9mm striker fired polymer frame gun. This is probably the most common setup in the world these days. In today's time, is the striker fire polymer frame. So this is a 12 round magazine that comes in this, and if you were carrying one in the chamber, that'd be a 13 round 9mm carry gun. So some of the advantages to this is, if this is a beginner's gun, it actually has a thumb safety on it. So you would carry it if you were wanting something that would not let the gun go off at any time. You have a thumb safety. Now, some of the downfalls to a thumb safety is it's an extra step. So when you have this thing in the holster, if you're carrying it in a holster like this and you draw it out, you have to train to be ready to take that safety off so the gun is ready to go. Because if you forget about this safety, it's in the holster, you draw it, threat's coming, it doesn't go off. Well, that's not good, folks. So you have to train with these safeties, these extra safeties that you have. And I don't prefer safeties myself. I just these guns are drop safe. They're not going to go off or anything. Plus, they have a couple other safeties like this trigger shoe safety right here. And they have an internal drop safety on them. So when you draw, it's ready to go. This is your safety, folks. Finger on the trigger, safety off. Finger off the trigger, safety on. That's the way I've always been trained. But it does have the option here, but this thing is 100% reliable. It has metal sights on it. The interchange with Glocks. It has a chamber loaded little window here where you can see when it's loaded, and just a very good option. And you got 13 rounds of 9mm. Now, one of the things that people often ask me is, which one is better, semi-automatic or a revolver? And I have a real common revolver here that people use to carry. This is a Smith & Wesson J-frame. This one happens to be a Model 60 38 Special. And they have these little J-frames in a variety of different setups here. They have them without hammers. They have a shrouded hammer on them. They have just open hammer, whatever you have. You see, the problem that people have with hammers is it snags on clothes and stuff like that when you're drawing them in and out. So they'll make a completely shrouded hammer that you can only you cannot get to with your thumb. And then they have a partially shrouded hammer that comes the way out. I've got one of those too. I've showed it before, where you can still get your thumb on it, but it will not protrude out like this. And then you have this one, which is your more conventional kind. Now, the thing about revolvers is you're going to be limited with capacity. Like with this small J-frame, I have a 5-round capacity, and we'll get into that here in a second. Now, when you draw this, there's no safeties or anything on this, and it's inside the holster. When you draw this out, it's ready to go. There's no safeties on it. Now, if you're using this in a self-defense situation, the majority of the time you're going to pull this thing, just pull the trigger, and it's going to shoot double action. You do have the ability to shoot single action. When you pull the hammer back, it greatly reduces the amount of pressure required to pull the trigger. I mean, greatly reduces it by like a third. It's probably a third of the pull weight on single action than it is double action. But if you ever had to pull deploy a firearm and use it, you're probably not going to be thinking about what the trigger pull is on it, folks. You're probably just going to be thinking, let me neutralize this threat right now, let me get rid of this, and we're going to be done with it. So what are the advantages of a revolver? It's usually going to be reliability. These things are usually 99.9% reliable. The only time you're going to run into a reliability issue with a revolver is usually going to be ammo related, or somebody's messed with the action on the inside and tried to lighten it up, and it doesn't give this hammer enough spring to deploy the primer on the cartridge. But if you leave things alone, folks, just how they came, this is going to be your most reliable option. When you get into the semi-automatics, you have a slide that needs to move back and forth. You have rounds that need to feed into this chamber right here. When they feed into that chamber, it goes off, it slides the slide back, feeds another one. There's a lot of moving parts on the outside of the gun, a lot of things that have to happen for this to have reload. So this one's got a lot more stuff that can go wrong than this one does on the externals. So you may have a reliability issue here. I mean, this gun here, this particular one, and pretty much all the ones I show you are going to be some of the most reliable guns you can money can buy. But reliability was always going to be an issue over a revolver when you are using a semi-automatic gun. It's always going to be an issue. It can always happen. It's more than likely going to happen with a semi-automatic gun than it will a revolver. Now, the disadvantage is you're going to have less rounds in this. This one's going to hold 5. This one's going to hold 12. So there's going to be a lot more. But what good is having more if it doesn't work? If you have one malfunction at the time that you need it, that's one more than you'll ever need, and you would be begging for the revolver. But they can both malfunction, folks. I just want you to know there's not going to be a guarantee on either one of them. But if you're a gambling person, you want to gamble on which one's more than likely going to work every single time, you're going to go with the revolver. If you're a gambling person and saying, I want to carry the most capacity that I can and I want to have the most shots, you might want to go with the semi-automatic. Now, as far as functionality, which one's easier? A lot of people, especially females that are just now getting into firearms, they have a problem pulling slides back like this when they get into firearms. A lot of people don't have the finger strength or the hand strength, and people that do it all the time, they don't understand this, but it really is an issue on semi-automatic guns to pull the slide back. But one of the things you got to understand, folks, is you load this magazine in, and you only have to do it one time. You can do it at home, and you chamber the round, and it's ready to go. Whenever you're using this weapon, more than likely you're not going to use all the ones that are in this magazine. But if you were to use every round in here, when you were done, it would lock the slide bag for you. If it functions correctly, it's going to lock the slide bag for you. You're going to drop this magazine out. You're going to put a new one in, and then all you have to do is just release it. You just pull back on this thing and release it, and you're ready to go again. But I understand that a lot of people don't have the hand strength and all that. With the revolver, the magazine always stays in it because the cylinder is the magazine. You don't have to worry about that at all. Now, the problem is when you go to use this weapon, you're probably going to be using double action, and the trigger is going to be sufficiently heavier than it will with the semi-automatic when you pull the trigger on this one. It's going to be a lot more. Now, you can remedy that by pulling this hammer back, but nobody's going to do that in the case of an emergency. They're going to draw this gun out, and they're just going to use it like this. Now, it's not a lot. It's not very heavy, but it actually helps, with a little bit of control. Let's take a deep breath. Let's figure out if this is what we want to do, because once you pull this trigger on this weapon, you're probably going to make one of the biggest decisions of your life. So you might want to think about it before you do it. That's why I've steered people towards these little Tauruses. This trigger is a weird trigger. It has a lot of take up on the initial pull. So it gives people that couple little extra seconds to think, is this really what I want to do? See how much take-up's in this thing? It's really weird. But once you pull it, all the rest of the follow-up shots are going to be very, very, very nice. Just a real tactical reset and all that. So just think about that. There's a couple things to think about. Now, as far as power, it depends on what caliber you choose, folks. Like, if you were to pick these two, the 9mm is going to be a little bit more powerful than the 38 Special, but it's not going to be a lot more powerful. It's not going to be that noticeable difference. People that get into all these ballistics with handguns and stuff like that, they crack me up. They absolutely just crack me up, and over half of them have no idea what they're talking about. So, but usually the revolver, you can get a lot more powerful rounds than you can in these semi-automatic ones. Just this scenario we happen to have here, this one's going to be a little less. These are the most common revolver calibers, and this is probably the most common little carry handgun caliber, 9mm versus 38 Special. Now, the tables would reverse. You can get a little gun like this, chamber it in 357 Magnum, and then you really have something. You're probably not going to find a little carry plastic gun. It's going to compete with the power of that. But then you're going to get into recoil issues. It's going to be a massive recoil, and you're going to have problems with follow-up shots if you don't practice. There's just so many different scenarios. One of the other things that I wanted to go through was people talk about these semi-automatic pistols and how complicated they are because they have a slide on them, and they said there's a lot more moving parts in this than there is this revolver. This revolver is a lot simpler. That's simply not true, folks. Simply not true. There's a lot more moving parts inside of a revolver than there ever dreamed of being inside of this thing. I mean, it's not even close. If anybody's ever taken one of these side plates off of a revolver and looked at all the stuff that goes on in here to make this cylinder rotate, it has to be on time and everything like that. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. So to say that this is a more simple design than this gun here is absolutely not true. To say it's more reliable, I could probably lean towards that. I would say that if I was betting everything that I have on which one of these are going to work more times than none not work, I'm going with the revolver every single time. But it's kind of a gamble you have to take, and people get into these, they'll think of every single different scenario on what makes their firearm better than one that somebody else has. Well, folks, it's simply whichever one you choose, familiarize yourself with it, learn how to operate it, make sure it's reliable, and make sure it works for you. Nothing's going to be 100% reliable at any time, but make sure it works for you. But don't get into some handgun war about which caliber's better and which kind's better. Obviously, whoever chose whatever they chose, whichever friend you have chose this gun over this gun or whatever gun, they did it for a reason. Just when you make your choice on what gun you want to carry, make sure you're familiar with it. Make sure you know everything about it and you know exactly how that gun's going to operate, because when the time comes, if and when that time ever comes when you have to use it, it's going to be the most important tool that you ever purchased, and you need to be familiar with it. Now's not the time to learn when Mr. Bad Guy is approaching you on whether your gun's going to work or not or how to operate it. It's just a real bad timing to figure it out. But anyway, folks, I wanted to compare a little Taurus 9mm to a Smith & Wesson revolver, show you two different options on carry guns, and it's a big decision to make. You'll hear these people talk about, well, in a gunfight, and all the people that talk about in a gunfight have never been in a gunfight. People don't get in gunfights anymore, folks. A self-defense situation, I think they say it averages 2.5 shots. Now, I understand there's no such thing as a half a shot, but both of these are good for that. And people that have to reload, they can either A, not shoot very well, or B, they're in a situation they probably shouldn't have been in to begin with. It's just Usually one shot gets it done, whether it hits it or not. The threat needs to leave. Nobody wants to come back saying, hey, that guy's shooting at me. I think I'm going to approach him. Capacity is not that big a deal, folks, in a carry handgun, unless you're going into some kind of combat situation. And if you're going into some kind of combat situation, these are not the ones that you want to carry with you. These are personal protection guns to carry on you. They're small, compact, and they will protect you in a situation. They are not going to take over the world. I promise you that. But anyway, folks, you have any questions on either one of these or what I discussed today, feel free to reach out to me. I'll answer any questions that you had. And thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.